Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, we'll take a look at some common Linux security misconceptions, that zero-day exploit hitting Office users, and then it's a great big batch of your questions, a rockin' roundup, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems network and administration podcast. We stream this episode live on March 27th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, GoDaddy, Ting, and iXsystems. I'll tell you more about those sponsors as we go on. Our live stream is powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. You've got to go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody.
Hey, Alan, how you doing this week? Feeling good?
I'm feeling good.
Very nice. I've noticed you're a little internet famous since you went to BSDCon. I don't know if you caught this. You might have, since you're the one that sent me the video. But you were in a very very cool video that was, I wouldn't call it a wrap up. But
no, this was the company whose name I won't try to pronounce. It's like Endensera or something. It's like a German, not firewall, but like network security company. The main guy there, Rake Fleuter, is the guy that did Relay D and VXLANs for OpenBSD.
Uh-huh.
And they had this very artistic set of videos they did for promoting their company. And he brought those guys with him to Tokyo, and they were filming random things, and they made this little 2-minute
really
compilation.
Cool. It's only 2 minutes, artsy. But the best part, I've fast-forwarded to the best part. I'll play it right here. Mm-hmm. Wait for it, ladies and gentlemen. Sure looks like a great time, too, Alan.
Oh, yes, it was amazing.
Look at all those people in the rain.
Yeah.
So peaceful. And interesting shots of food.
Horrible. I got so wet.
Yeah, we have a lot of that here. Now, here you go. Here it comes. The best shot of Alan Jude on the internet. Right there. Wearing the OpenCFS shirt. That's a great shot. There's a shot of food, too, which I like that, too.
Yep, that food was good, too.
Yeah, it looks like that. He's got a great crew. I mean, that is a really well-done video.
They have some other videos there. There's one that you should avoid, though.
Oh, really?
There's one of Rake in the shower, and it's like, why is that there?
I'm glad you warned me, Alan. Just because you never know.
You can see it. There's a little preview across the bottom. The little dots are actually the pagination.
Yeah.
You'll see one of them is just his face with water dripping off of it. That's because he's in the shower.
Oh, I do see that.
I'm like, I didn't need to see that. I actually told him to his face in HBSDCon. It's like, why did I have to see that?
Wow. That is pretty funny.
No one should have to see that.
We got something fun going on. So, I've been working on the studio, and if you go over to Instagram.com/Jupiter Broadcasting, we have some pictures of some of the work in progress at the new studio, and folks can check that out. And we've also got some pictures of folks who've gotten their last 300 swag. Here's the soundproofing. It came in this little box, and then I broke the styrofoam or cellophane wrap it was in, and it just exploded in size as soon as it came out of that packaging. That was pretty cool.
Well, yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, I know. It was just funny because it's like I knew it would blow up. I took a picture beforehand, take a picture after, and it got even bigger afterwards. So Instagram.com/Jupiter Broadcasting, we got pictures of folks wearing their new swag, and we'll keep this updated with stuff from the studio or when other shows have swag, and folks send in their pictures. We'll post them up there, and you can check them out. There's my desk at the new studio.
Yeah, because there's the old Jupiter Broadcasting shirt.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that old. But
No.
And then there's the newer, and then for some reason there's somebody dressed as a monkey, and
you have a few cameos in here too. Like there's a few folks in here who have they have their screens on in the background with your face on.
Right, but there's also the one of me in my Jupiter Broadcasting shirt.
Right, that's true. So you can check that out.
Chris in the yellow hat.
If you got your last swag, send it in to us, and we'll put it on there so we can show it off. The print turned out really well too, and the coin's awesome as well. It all worked out pretty well. Pretty well. Alan, last week was a huge show. I didn't even realize how big last week's show was until we got all done, and it was like over 2 hours. I was like, holy smokes, it's like 2 hours and like 2 minutes. I was like, where did that come from? We had a lot to catch up on. And there's been some interesting developments this week. One is I think it's an exploit out in the wild. We have maybe a critical look, you might call it, at Linux security, and just definitely things you need to consider now that Linux is getting more popular online. But first, Alan, I want to talk about something that's getting more and more popular every single day. That's our first sponsor this week, and that is Ting.com. Go to TechSNAP.Ting.com to get started. TechSNAP.Ting.com, helping users like me break away from the awful monopolistic practices of the wireless industry. I'm rocking my Nexus 5, and when I hold this phone in my hands, and I hope this is what our future will look like, where you can buy a phone directly from the vendor for a reasonable price, in this case, Google Play. And then I can go to a service provider like Ting, who only charges me for what I use. It's a flat $6 a month, and then it's my usage on top of that. So my minutes, my messages, my megabytes, they all get added up at the end of the month. Whatever bucket I fall into, that's all I have to pay. Included with my plan is hotspot and tethering. So think about how valuable that is. It's not, I don't have to pay into some sort of special level of my plan, something I might not get value out of on most months. But in that occasion where I need to get some work done right away, and I need internet access, it's so nice to know that I can pull this Nexus 5 out of my pocket, check a box that's built into Android, and just have an access point. And at the new studio, I'm getting like 14 megabits. They have, Sprint has their Sprint Network Vision, I think they call it, or Sprint Vision, where they're rolling out now to 400 cities across the U.S. that now have LTE. They've really been ramping up their coverage, so it's something worth checking out. And here's how I want you to get started. Go to TechSNAP.Ting.com. Try out that savings calculator. You go over there, you plug in how much your bill is, your messages and your minutes you use, and how many megabytes, what your average bill cost is, and they'll calculate what your savings would be. After you've checked that out, take a look at some of their devices. They're adding new devices all the time, a whole different range of spectrums, from the absolute high-end Android devices to incredible value devices that you could get for under $100 that you would own outright with no contract and no early termination fee. Plus, Ting has an incredible dashboard that lets you manage your Ting account without having to go through all the hassles of some weird UI or a web page that only works in certain browsers. If you run into
or
that,
having to phone someone and wait on hold just to make a simple change.
No, you never have to wait on hold.
We're
No,
the geeky people. We want to do it ourselves and not have to bother a human if we don't need to.
Yeah.
Right? Just give me the tools. I will handle it. I know what I'm doing.
And I can do it on my schedule, which is a big thing for me. It's like, okay, I can get to this tonight.
I tend to be awake when other people aren't.
Exactly. And the best part is, like, if it got to be to the point where I couldn't get a resolution through the community, they have an active forum, if I couldn't just do it myself through the dashboard, which that almost... Even when you're activating, deactivating brand new devices, like you can, I mean, there's the range you can do through their dashboard is incredible. But if you ever got to that point where you got stuck, you call them at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and a real Canadian answers the phone. A Canadian who knows about your operating system that's on your phone, who knows how your plan works, who is empowered to solve your problems. That's the best kind of Canadian. Just ask Alan.
Yes.
He knows. That's why we have Alan on the show.
Other carrier, you call some other phone company and the person's not allowed to do anything. They're just there to make you
let me transfer
like
you. What is your problem? Could you describe it? And can you give me your account number 5 more times? Yeah. And so not only do they have excellent customer service, but with their very straightforward billing process, you can be comfortable with it. You can understand what's going on, and you know that your money is going towards a company who's trying to fix a lot of the wrongs in the mobile industry.
Right.
So get started.
You can tell they have the right culture when their phone number is Ting for the win.
Yeah, and their Twitter account is also TingFTW.
Yeah.
They're all about it. So go over to TechSNAP.Ting.com. That'll take $25 off your first device. If you've already got a device you want to bring, like the iPhone 5, 4S, or lots of Android devices, they have a BYOD page. They'll take $25 off your first month of service. And by the way, if you're in a contract, they have an early termination relief program. $75 per line, you have to get canceled. Go see what I've been talking about, TechSNAP.Ting.com. And a big thank you to Ting.
You mentioned the hotspot tethering stuff. Mm-hmm. In Japan, if you have one of those little hotspots, you were easily able to make friends. Right? It's like there were only so many of them. I couldn't get one because they were all rented out when I went to get one at the airport. Yeah. And so, anyone who could supply internet at the conference was very popular.
It's a valuable resource.
Exactly. Like, a lot of people don't have it, or, their phone company wants to charge an extra separate fee for it or whatever. And just, it's a great thing you have that no one else does.
I'll give a quick plug too. They have a pop quiz going on right now where they're giving away some Ting swag, and it's just questions about acronyms, like what does LTE, GSM, BYOD, ESN, MEID, SMS, MMS stand for? I bet we all know those. I mean, I know all those. You guys know all those. So if you go over to ting.com/blog, visit TechSNAP.Ting.com first so we get credit for your visit. If you fill that out by Friday, you can be entered into a drawing to win some free Ting swag. And you guys know all those answers. That's an easy one. And by the way, this one's a little late. But they also they just wrapped up, if you left them a video about what was wrong with the mobile industry, they're giving away a Nexus 5 and some Ting credits. That wraps up like at tomorrow though, but you can find that at ting.com/blog too. If you watching this live or get it like in a couple hours.
So if you're watching live, don't stop watching. But as soon as this is over, go do that.
Yeah, go over to the Ting blog. All they want is a video on what's wrong with the mobile industry. Well, I could give you 100 things, right? And they just leave them a video, and you'll be entered in a drawing to win a Nexus 5 and $400 at Ting credit. Of course, you do have to be a resident of the U.S. because that's where Ting is located. Okay, Alan. So you have in here sort of exploring a note to explore some of the misconceptions for Linux security, and I think this is a good one because even in our own chat room, we'll see people say things like, "Well, I run Linux that way; I don't have to worry about exploits or viruses and things like that."
Right.
And that's just not simply the case anymore, is it?
Well, I don't know that it was ever technically the case, but it's getting worse and worse, and so people need to pay attention. So this Security Week did an article about this from the Conspiracy Conference, where a bunch of this was talked about. Right? So there's perception out there that Linux systems don't need additional security, that when you install it, it's secure. And that's not necessarily true. And also, as Linux grows more and more mainstream and popular, it becomes a target, right? Before, nobody targeted Linux desktops with malware because there weren't enough of them to bother. But now there are, right?
So this is not just server. We're talking desktop too. Okay.
Servers especially, but desktops as well.
Okay.
And we've also seen it actually start happening, right? There have been malware with variants and variable payloads. We've seen stuff actually targeting Linux desktop users. Right, but it's like a Flash or a Java exploit that then drops one of 3 payloads, depending on if you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux. So it doesn't care which operating system you're using; it's got an exploit for your system. And then you have a virus, you have malware on your Linux box, just like you had on your Windows box.
Right, and we've talked about how the routers are being attacked more, those Soho routers, and then it doesn't really matter if it's an iPhone or a Linux box or a Windows box. It's gonna
If it's not secure if you're going through a device you can't trust. Exactly.
Right. So where do we start?
Linux servers have been under attack for more than a decade, right? But the incidents weren't really publicized because nobody cared that Joe Bob's little Linux server in the corner there got compromised and his website was slow. Because it was off sending spam or something. Yeah. Right? And, when all they're using it for is to send spam, it's a big deal, but it's not
headline news.
Yeah. But we're seeing things change. The most common attacks against Linux machines, especially servers, aren't necessarily, zero-day exploits against the kernel or some critical service, but rather compromising a web application and making it do something like send spam or participate in a botnet or DDoS someone or something, right? Or just plain old brute force password cracking, right? We've seen how many, a bunch of these viruses we talked about, like the Seadorked and Wendigo we talked about last week. They're just brute forcing the root password on these systems, or a user password that happens to be able to suit a root. And then once they're in, they just infect the machine. And all the web pages it serves give out malware, or they use to host other malware or send phishing emails or whatever they want to do. Or host phishing sites. That's one of the most popular uses of an exploited Linux server. That spam you get with, the fake link to Bank of America, well, that has to actually be on a website somewhere. Well, why not use some hacked web server where the page is going to...
Right, I mean, that way it's not tracked back to you. It's tracked back to the site you hacked.
Well, also, it's not your server that's getting shut down. Or because it's a legitimate server, they get a little more leeway on how much time they get before they just turn it off.
Right.
And things like that.
You're trashing somebody else's reputation, too, when you do that. And
yes, or that person already has a reputation where it'll take a little bit for it to get all the way down, whereas you have a negative reputation because you're a spammer. It's still important to keep all your services and libraries up to date, right? You still want to be running the latest OpenSSH, OpenSSL, web server, mail server, etc., because those can be exploited and then you're in trouble. But most of the cases of a compromised Linux server aren't because of those things. And so even, mitigations like ASLR and NXBit and dep and stuff aren't necessarily going to help when the exploit isn't on that level. Typical best practices for Linux servers, especially you see like places like Rackspace and so on, they'll, sell you a firewall to put in front of your server, and then you'll be secure.
Yeah, you got a firewall. You're fine. Nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and open up port 80, would you? Because you got to get web traffic in.
Yeah, and then your web app is just as vulnerable as if you didn't have the firewall.
Exactly.
What's the point of the firewall?
Unless that firewall is doing some sort of stateful packet inspection and intercepting stuff in real time.
Even stateful packet inspection, that just means allow connections out and allow the corresponding packets back in without me having to open each individual port.
Right. And I don't think...
But that's not actually...
And I don't think Rackspace offers... And I could be wrong on this, but I don't think Rackspace offers... Like, I'll give you an example. We had a checkpoint firewall that would literally do, like, inline pattern analysis to determine what that traffic was doing and if it was going outside what we had defined as normal behavior. And I bet you... I mean, the cost, that rig was like $25,000 to do that. So I bet you the Rackspace ones are the ones on EC2.
Most of them are really, really old Cisco things they have laying around.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing that. Yeah, it's a firewall's not going to do it.
Yeah, and so there are things called web application firewalls that inspect HTTP traffic and look for stuff like in the URL string and be like, hey, that looks like an SQL injection. I'm going to block that. And that works to a point, but they kind of depend on understanding how the application works. Mm-hmm. Right? So firewalls generally don't help against attacks on web applications because they operate at layer 3 and 4, right? They're looking at like IP, UDP, and TCP. Well, when you're only looking at the TCP level, you see IP addresses and port numbers. You don't see what's in the packet. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not the firewall's job to look in the packet. So then you have your web application firewall that runs at layer 7 and actually looks at it. But, sometimes they're the thing that makes you susceptible to a distributed denial of service attack because they can only inspect so many requests per second.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's possible that they
it's a choke point.
Can end up, it actually can be the thing that brings your website down.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're designed, basically they look for what's normal for this app. Well, if you're using a common app, that works. But if you have something in-house or something, then it gets a lot more complicated as far as, what's allowed and what's abnormal.
Right. Well, we updated the application, and now it's supposed to be making these calls that your firewall is blocking.
Yeah.
And we've all seen, in fact, you and I both played a somewhat popular Star Trek MMO, that a lot of times the thing that would cause their service to go down at login would be that their load balancer was overloaded. So it just couldn't distribute the logins. And it's the same thing with any kind of thing that's the choke point for traffic like that.
Yep. And then, they also mentioned intrusion detection systems. But again, those are relying on detecting a specific pattern that's known to be bad.
Mm-hmm. It's like viruses that rely on antivirus patterns. They're more effective after it's been detected and understood and analyzed for a while. So it doesn't give you any of that immediate protection necessarily.
Exactly. And, so they're often unable to detect the attack, or they're so sensitive that they just detect false positives all the time. Mm-hmm. And so the real attack is detected, but it's buried in a report full of noise and false positives, and you can't recognize what's real and what's not.
I've already tuned them all out because it's so much noise.
Yeah. And we've seen once they get in there, we've seen the back doors they drop get remarkably sophisticated now, right? Like, they're like, well, we'll only modify the binary in memory, so we don't change it on disk, so intrusion detection systems don't pick up the changed file on disk.
Right.
Or, we're storing the configuration in shared memory, so you can't actually tell what's going on,
mm-hmm.
or
deactivating it when you come from a certain IP, so that way, this is the admin's IP, I turn off.
Somebody's logged in as root. I'm going to not do anything until he logs out.
Yeah.
Or let's look at every IP that's ever logged in as root and never try to serve malware to those people. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, I'm normally exfiltrating data, right? I'm stealing data and sending it back to myself. But whenever the interface goes into promiscuous mode, which is usually what happens when you run TCP dump or Wireshark on it, let's stop doing that so that they won't see the traffic when they're analyzing it.
Right.
And they'll be like, I don't see anything. Right? And they also point out that Linux servers are often out of date, especially in big enterprises. Part of that might be because, Linux distributions don't have a concept similar to Microsoft's Patch Tuesday, where the patches come out once a month and you install them and deal with it. They tend to kind of come out whenever, although that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? The security updates happen more often, right? There's a flaw in OpenSSL.
Right.
They coordinate, fix it. Everybody releases the patch the same day.
Yeah.
And
you don't have to wait a month.
It's out as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. But that irregular cadence and stuff doesn't always fit well with an enterprise environment, so it gets put off. And once you put something off, it gets put off again and again and again.
Downtime is a hard thing to schedule for a lot of enterprises, and if they're not built to sort of be able to shut part of the system down and manage it and do maintenance, then yeah, I mean, you usually end up having to do it after hours with some sort of management approval, and then you have to be able to clearly demonstrate what the risk is. And in some cases, you still have to say, yeah, we're going to be updating PHP, we're going to be updating Apache. There is theoretically some risk, and as soon as you tell your management, yeah, there's theoretically some risk because I am changing the packages that our web app runs on top of, there's pushback. And it's really, it's one of these things where it's pretty easy to quickly convince yourself that it's not that important to update all the time.
Yep.
Which we always say, don't do that. Patch your S.
Most enterprise patch management systems don't have support for Linux. And it's often hard to tell just by looking at a Linux server whether it's got the latest patch to OpenSSL or not. Right?
Yeah. I wonder, is that still much of a problem?
It can be. Like, when it's all in the package manager, sometimes it's hard to tell, is that the latest version or what, right?
Yeah.
Or when was that last updated and stuff?
Right.
FreeBSD addressed this a little bit in their base system. Before, uname would tell you the patch level, but that was only if the patch applied to the kernel. So when there was a patch that only fixed bind, the uname wouldn't get updated because it wouldn't make you update your kernel and reboot since the change only required restarting one service. So they introduced a userland library, a userland app that returns the version of the userland, so that'll show that patch level separate from the kernel patch level.
Okay.
So that you actually be able to tell, hey, I've actually installed that bind patch.
And some, Red Hat has wrapped the Red Hat Enterprise Network Services around Red Hat, but even there, I don't recall like a specific way that says, hey, well, actually, you can run a report to show all of the non-applied patches to servers, but that's something you have to pay into.
That's not necessarily the same thing as saying, I have patch level 7, which was released on this date.
Right. Yeah. They have big roll-up releases every couple of years.
Yeah.
I guess
it just seems like it's hard to manage.
Is this a problem Puppet helps a little bit with?
Yes and no, maybe. Like, if there's a way to tell what the patch level is, you can extract that with Factor and have that in your report or whatever,
And Ryan in the chat room points out that Canonical has Landscape to manage Ubuntu-based machines.
Right. But that doesn't help when you have a mixed environment of Windows servers and Red Hat servers and so on.
Yeah.
The quote from the article here is, the main problem is that these system administrators think that their Linux systems are so secure that they haven't actually done anything to secure them. Right? It's Linux is supposed to be secure out of the box.
Bad admin, bad.
Yeah. Says Javid Jacoby, who's the security researcher at the Global Research and Analysis team for Kaspersky Labs, who was running the conference this was at. For example, the default Linux configuration for most distributions doesn't restrict login attempts. Right? So attackers can attempt to brute force passwords by running through lists of possibilities without having to worry about being locked out. Or getting disconnected from the server or something like that. So it's something the administrator has to manually configure, and a lot of people don't. And we've seen this in the wild. These attacks are successful because not everybody runs fail to ban or deny hosts or whatever, configures it properly to block brute force attempts.
Anytime I've worked at a place that had like a large, 50 plus server deployment of Linux, the process there was always an internal solution. Create a checklist when you deploy a Linux server that it must conform to all of these things, and then you would audit it at the end of the build. And that was sort of an internal manual way to compensate for things like some distributions allow, we talked about this last week, some distributions allow SSH root login by default, some don't. So how do you normalize that? You have to go through and audit every single one when you deploy it.
Well, that's where a system like Puppet, where it has a manifest of what the server should look like, and it checks for the delta and applies the change, so that, the problem with a checklist or a script is that you did it once and then you don't know, is it still working?
Right.
Did I miss a step? Was there an error?
Right. Yeah, we would. The Puppet, really. I wish I was still doing that when Puppet came around more, because then I never was really working any really large deployments by the time Puppet got popular. But what we used to do is we would have to go back and audit them.
Yep.
And it was just a really boring process. And we would create bash scripts and things like that to help automate it, but it was still the least amount of fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, just that you can check out the article if you want and think about that when you're dealing with your server, no matter what kind it is.
Right. Go through, and if you have a lot of servers, make sure that you have some sort of system to make sure that things are set up the way you want them, and make sure logging is turned on properly.
Yes, and always patch your shit.
Always. That's a very good point. All right, Alan, well, I would like to thank our next sponsor this week, and that is GoDaddy.com. They have a special $2.95.com promo rolling, and it just is going to wrap up at the end of this month, so take advantage of it while you can, because there's only a few days left to use the promo code 295TECH when you check out. 295TECH gets you a .com for $2.95. Some limitations apply, so check out their website. They got a banner at the top if you click the link through our show notes. Additional years or .coms, only $9.99. A crazy great deal. Let's see. We recently bought linuxafterparty.com, and there was another domain I just got, although I cannot remember what it was now. I got it for something we're working on, but it's just escaped my mind. And the reason why I grabbed these things at $2.95, it's like, okay, this is the best time ever to get this thing, and I know if I'm going to need it in a month or two, I should grab it now at this discount. And what I do with these domains before I put them into their final roll, you might say, is I just go into the DNS forwarding thing. I forward those URLs to somewhere else in the meantime. That way they're still working. They're still usable. That's how we did jbtitles.com. That's how we did linuxafterparty.com at $2.95. And if you've been thinking about buying a .com for something, get it done. Get it taken care of. I know what it was. Oh yeah, I have a new VPS that I set up, and I was like, well, I'm sick of typing in this IP address. So for $2.95, why not, right? It's like now I just put in a .com. So go over to GoDaddy.com, the world's #1 domain name registrar. Use the promo code 295TECH when you check out, and get yourself something great. Get something neat. And if you don't have anything to do with it immediately, you can just have it forward to the TechSNAP show page. We don't mind. That's fine. Yep. Fine by Alan and Chris. So $2.95 when you check out. And a big thank you to GoDaddy for the long-time sponsorship of the TechSNAP program. Look at Danica in that buff suit. That is so funny. It's like my favorite thing ever. I think that's great. $2.95 when you check out. So something for those office workers to worry about. I guess there's a 0 day that hits Microsoft right in the gut. Poosh, Microsoft Office. Poosh, what's going on, Alan?
So there's a 0 day for Microsoft Word that is actually triggered by Microsoft Outlook.
Oh, that's lovely.
So Microsoft issued a warning on Monday of a new 0 day exploit against Microsoft Word that's actively being exploited in the wild, although it's very targeted currently. So Microsoft released an emergency fix-it solution, which is their little, you download it, install it, and it fixes it until they can do a real patch.
Yeah.
The attack is especially bad since it doesn't require the victim to actually open a malicious email. All they have to do is click on it in the list, and when the preview comes up, boom, exploited.
Oh man, these are my favorite. And I wanted to say,
I thought they fixed these in 2003.
I thought so too. I thought we had no JavaScript auto execute. Is it the image thing? I mean, what is it?
It's a rich text file.
Oh.
Which is a text file.
Yeah.
But there's enough in the interpreter for that. It's complicated enough that they can actually manage to exploit it and make a mess.
And some of the biggest hacks we've seen, right? Wasn't, if I'm right, Stuxnet came through because a Flash object was embedded in an Excel spreadsheet? I mean, these Office has got a rep these days.
Yeah. So according to Microsoft's advisory, the flaw is present in Word 2003, 2007, 2010, 2013. Word Viewer, which is the one you can download for free just to view a Word doc without editing it.
Yep.
I happen to have that installed. I don't have Microsoft Office on my machine, but I need that because sometimes docx files don't open correctly in OpenOffice.
Yeah, so you just have the viewer just in case.
Yeah. And the Office for Mac 2011 is also vulnerable. So the attack used a malicious rich text file. Outlook renders rich text files with Microsoft Word instead of doing it itself.
Yes.
So as soon as you preview it, it fires up Microsoft Word in the frame to do it, and then that RTF malicious code runs in the Microsoft Word.
Oh, man.
So their fix-it solution is just to disable automatically opening RTF content in your email with Microsoft Word.
There is a way, to disable Word. Oh, no, I'm thinking of the editor. I don't know about the viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Word's not the default editor anymore, although it's an option.
Yeah.
But Word is the default for viewing RTF content in Outlook, and this just changes it. The fix-it solution. The attack can also be worked around by configuring your email client to view all emails as plain text. So I have instructions for both of those.
That's the way to go. I mean, I know it sucks. I know it's not as pretty.
Yeah, some emails don't make sense.
But the nice thing about plain text too is you get like somebody sends you an HTML email or an RTF email. You see the URL, and so you know if it's a phishing URL before you even click it. Sometimes it's a little harder when it's HTML or RTF, and it's just a little blue underlined words.
Like, who doesn't know to hover?
I know, but when you're rushing and stuff. But if it's all in text, it's right there in front of your face.
Yeah. The attack is actually very sophisticated. As we mentioned, it was only being used against certain people currently. So the exploit makes use of an ASLR bypass. So ASLR, address space layout randomization, makes it hard for an attack. Normally, like in a buffer overflow, you have like a buffer in memory, and then when you fill it too much, you can then, execute that part of the buffer, right? By pushing the data into the part where the code is supposed to be, so that it runs your code. Well, ASLR means that the different parts get put in different places, and you can't predict where that's going to be, so you don't know how much you have to overflow the buffer to make your code go where you want it to go.
Right.
But it uses a bypass for that somehow to actually
There's a bypass?
exploit it anyway. Apparently. It also uses ROP techniques, or return-oriented programming, which allows it to bypass the NX bit, which is a feature on the processor that says don't execute this section of memory is data, so don't ever execute it. Or it's also called data execution prevention in Windows, DEP. So apparently they have a technique for working around that mitigation as well.
Huh. I'd not heard about a bypass around ASLR, but I guess it doesn't seem that. I mean, it's go figure, right?
Yeah, well, it's an optional feature, so it's probably pretty easy to trick it into turning it off.
Yeah.
It also uses a bunch of shellcode and then several layers of tools designed to detect and defeat analysis. So the code attempts to determine if it's running in a sandbox, and if it is, it won't execute, and it'll try to hamper analysis and reverse engineering.
Speaking of smart malware.
It tries to detect if it's in, debugging mode, or if it's inside a virtual machine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The exploit also checks for how recently you've installed Windows updates.
Oh, wow.
And once you've installed, the shellcode will not perform any additional malicious actions if the updates have been installed after April 8th, 2014.
Huh.
So what they figure that Microsoft's going to find and make a patch for this. So after that date, it's not even going to try to execute anymore. The general idea being that if they hadn't been detected at all by stopping at a certain date, then no one would notice anymore, because they wouldn't be doing that one anymore, and it would allow them to save that exploit for later without it being detected. But in this case, it did get detected.
Oh, man.
But yeah, at this point...
So they were trying to be sneaky as heck.
At this point, the exploit will likely shut down before Microsoft gets a patch out.
Wow. So...
Because actually, April 8th is the next patch Tuesday.
Yeah. So think about this. This malware has gotten so smart that isn't somebody... What?
Yeah, at this point, it seems like this one was specifically designed really high-end to go after certain people.
Yeah.
So this kind of has, the state actor type of thing.
And the other thing that was making me think that is the self-disabling to avoid detection, because in the Snowden leaks, we saw specifically that the NSA, when they thought they were targeting somebody who was a little more sophisticated, they would intentionally use less sophisticated malware, so that way if it was discovered, they wouldn't be revealing to anybody that they had advanced malware. So this sort of building in a limiter or trying to sort of underplay your hand reminds me of other state actors who have worked in this area. So it does kind of give it that state vibe to it. I'm wondering this, Alan. If malware is at this point where it can do all of these things, why can't we have good guy malware? It's like not malware, it's like palware, and it goes in there and it solves all of your tech problems. Like you could release this on a dozen XP boxes and clean them up. Clean up their registry, clean up their drives, clean up all of their problems, self-correct, connect to the internet, monitor the user. I mean, let's use it for good. Call it palware.
Generally, registry cleaners are the malware.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. And I have seen so many exploits come through Outlook that have taken advantage of that. Just click the email, and when it previews, exploits happen. I mean, we've had ActiveX exploits. We've had HTML problems in Internet Explorer, in the Triton and rendering engine. Word was such an attack vector that Microsoft finally relented on setting it as the default composer, even though end users love that S. I had clients that would have me turn on the default word editor again because they want bold, they want to be able to underline, and they like the way it looks. I mean, it just was they had fancier signatures that looked better when Word was the composer. But finally, Microsoft relented and disabled that because it kept becoming an attack vector. Here we are, 2014, and Word's integration with Outlook is still being exploited to get malware on people's computers just when you preview an email in Outlook. I feel like this is something this story could have this is more sophisticated malware, but this story literally could have been right out of the 90s and the early 2000s. It's these kinds of things that really bother me about the Windows platform. And I guess the moral of the story is, if you want, it seems like if you've been rocking plain text email this whole time through all of these iterations of problems that Outlook has had, if you've been using plain text email, you've been fine this entire time.
Yep.
Interesting stuff. Wow, malware's getting smart. Any other thoughts on that story?
No. That's there's thread post has a bunch more details about the exploit and the ROP and all that stuff if you're interested.
Blaster's in our chat room right now. He's like, could you send me the link to that? Because I want to tell people before they leave work today. They need to know about this. So you could join us live too. Go over to jblive.tv. We have an embedded chat room on that page. You can hang out with us while we record the show. When we take segment breaks, like between the news and the feedback, we hang out and chillax with the chat room. It's a good time. Alan, before we go, I think maybe I'll tell you about something else that's pretty smart, and that's iXsystems. Yes. iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. iXsystems makes incredible machines powered by Intel processors, and they have a white glove end-to-end purchasing process. And, have you seen this rig they just blogged about called the Megaport?
Yes.
What is the Megaport?
It is the most amazing thing I have ever seen.
What? Okay. So I remember the Mega Core, the monster they made for the FreeBSD Foundation. Is this kind of like the same thing?
Yes and no, except for instead of being focused on having 80 cores, although it actually does have 80 cores. So a customer came up and they said, well, we need this custom solution. And, they looked at other vendors and nobody could build this because it
requires the whole range of expertise.
It'll require custom building some stuff, but we'll make it happen. And they did. So what it is a 2U server that actually contains 4 separate servers. So this is their
this is
2U
amazing.
twin squared. And so basically it's 4 separate computers. Each one has 256 gigs of RAM and a 10-core processor. With hyper-threading and all that stuff.
Oh,
and
my God.
You can see the picture there. They pull one of them out.
Yeah.
Each one is this little sled. Takes up about a quarter of the machine.
So one unit is 4 servers.
Yeah. No, it's 2U high. But yeah, one physical machine is actually 4 completely isolated servers.
I meant one. Yeah.
And the fun thing is that each of the 4 servers has 6 10-gigabit Ethernet ports. That's why it's called Megaport. So that in this one 2U chassis, there are 24 10-gigabit ports.
Wow.
That's 4 Intel SFP Plus 10-gigabit ports and 2 Intel X540 RJ45 copper ports.
This
so you get 2 copper ports that are reverse compatible to 1 gigabit and the 4 fiber optic ports in each server. And there's 4 of them in the 2U machine. So that's 240 gigabits that can go in and out of the server.
Wow.
The fact that they managed to squeeze all that in, it's a pretty custom design.
Well, this is just what I love about iXsystems is they have that perfect crossbreed of software expertise, community involvement, and hardware expertise. And the hardware
and
expertise,
connections with hardware vendors.
Exactly. It extends to actual connections with their top tier hardware providers. That it's exactly the kind of relationship you want your manufacturer to have with their providers. And that's how I would describe iX from top to bottom. If you're getting a consumer piece of equipment like the FreeNAS, all the way up to something like the Megaport, iXsystems will handle it for you. And they also have an excellent burn-in process, so that way when you receive the equipment...
You can actually see, if you're looking at the pictures, you see that this machine is on a conveyor belt type thing, and it's got a bunch of cables plugged into it because the machine is actually being tested.
Right. They do the burn-in.
They actually, they run the machine for 3 days and make sure that everything's exactly right and that, everything works and that, the hard drive isn't failing. and before they ship it to you.
Did you mention that each one of those nodes provides dual 10-core Intel CPUs? That's 80 physical cores packed in 2U of space. 80 cores in a 2U server when you combine it all together.
Yep. And a terabyte of RAM between the 4 machines as well.
I want one of those so bad, Alan. That just seems like wow. You could have a Beowulf cluster in one rack, two U's of rack space. That's just unbelievable. Yep. So go over to iXsystems.com/TechSNAP to get started. That lets them know you heard it here. What were you going to say?
Yep. They just started offering upgraded 5-year hardware warranties as well.
Oh, nice. Wow.
They believe in the hardware so much that they'll now warranty it for 5 years as an add-on. You know,
I've got many servers that have been in production for that long, and I can appreciate that because those last couple of years often are sort of just in the no man's land where you're a little uncomfortable with what might happen.
It's new enough that it should be okay, but not...
yeah.
But it's not in warranty anymore, and you're like, it's still good hardware, and it works, and I don't want to replace it.
So go over to iXsystems.com/TechSNAP, see why we've been raving about them. You can also grab their ultimate guide to buying a new server for open source. 11 key traits you must absolutely demand from your provider. Give them your name and your email. They're not going to spam you. That's how you get it. Hey, look, there you are right there on the page.
Am I?
Yep. At the bottom.
Awesome.
iX didn't ask to sponsor the show. We asked them because we love them so much. We said, you've got to come on here because we just want to rave about you guys. So check them out, iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. Get yourself some gear, and if you're thinking about doing a big upgrade or a big purchase either for home or for your business space, they're definitely worth checking out. They've got some great stuff on their blog too. You can go see the Megaport once you go over there. Just click on their go to TechSNAP.com or iXsystems.com/TechSNAP, and then if you click on what's new, they've got the Megaport up there. You can check it out.
Yep.
Very cool. Thank you to iXsystems.
And that's some serious server porn there.
That is, honestly, one of the coolest things I have ever seen in the server hardware space. It really is amazing.
Looking like that like it's 1/4 of a U basically.
Yeah.
And it's got not only 4 fiber 10 gigabit ports, 2 copper 10 gigabit ports, the regular 1 gigabit port for the management system, the USB ports, the video port, all that jammed in this. It's like there's literally no space left for any more ports.
It's kind of amazing. It really is kind of
I wouldn't have believed you could get that many ports in a machine that small.
No.
Like 6 ports in a 1U chassis all by itself would be difficult.
I'm so glad they posted that. I hope they keep doing that.
24 and 2.
That is so cool to look at that. It gives me...
And it highlights the fact that you don't go to them and say, I need a server with these things. You're like, I have this problem. What's the best way to solve it?
Right.
And they're like, well, we'll build this entirely custom thing that no one else has ever seen, and it'll be amazing.
It's so cool. It's just a great team over there. So check them out.
It is.
Thank you, iXsystems. Now, Alan, I was starting to say we're live. Would you give folks a little hint when we do the show live? Because I could say, hey, we do it live at 1 p.m. Pacific, but that's just going to help a minority of folks. So maybe you could fill them in on the details.
Well, that's 4 p.m. Eastern or 2100 UTC.
There you go.
Sorry, 2000 UTC. Freaking daylight savings time.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
2000 UTC.
Okay. JupiterBroadcasting.com.
Although that's still the same time that you normally watch it, just your daylight savings time has changed too, but UTC is smart and doesn't have daylight savings time.
Right.
So our time changed relative to it. So yes, 2000 UTC.
This is going to be like the summer. Like this is like when it becomes springtime, we have to go through this all the time now. They just got it all messed up, Alan.
So in January, it was making sure to say 2014 instead of 2013.
Yeah.
And now
finally got that.
Spring is finally here. Yeah. I have to say 2000 instead of 2100. And then in the fall, I have to switch back. And
it's all because we just made it up and agreed to it for so long now. I don't know. All right, Alan. Well, that wraps up the news segment. So I think that means it's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com or pop in that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Yeah, we got a subreddit! Brand new, just launched it this week. We're really excited. Check it out, links.techsnap.tv. Alan, our first email this week comes in from Ben, and it's actually just kind of a follow-up to a question I just sort of casually floated in 153. He said, You mentioned in TechSNAP that you'd received a MicroKit router from a JB audience member, that was Noah, and we're considering using it in the new studio. I happen to be running a multi-ISP setup using a MiroTik platform at home. Now, I was kind of thinking maybe doing DSL and cable at the new studio. He says, while I'm lucky enough to have 2 ISPs where I live, neither one of them are overly reliable. So I'm hosting my own email at home, and I work from home quite frequently, so the once-a-month downtime I seem to get from both ISPs just wasn't cutting it. I'm using a router board CRS 125, 24 gigabit ports, and he links us to it, so if you guys want to see that, we'll have a link in his email. It's a layer 3 switch that runs the same router OS distribution that all MiroTik's other products do. Also, it's pretty hard to beat a layer 3 switch with a built-in 802.11n radio for $225. The magic to make a connection load balancing work is called per-connection queuing in Router OS parlance. The Router OS wiki has an article on setting it up. It uses a hash function to determine which route to use, and it supports as many routes as you have ports on your router. You can also set up preferred routes for traffic matching specific patterns, like Skype, for example, using router marks. This solution works well for me, and since you already have a MiroTik hardware, I figured I'd let you know how I'm doing this. Thanks for the great shows. That is really interesting.
Yep.
I like the traffic pattern matching, too. For Skype, that's a great example.
Yeah, I've done all that stuff by hand on FreeBSD. I'm not sure. I've never tried to do it with pfSense because I've never had 2 connections since then. But back in the day, I did it just with IPFW, and I did uneven balancing. So rather than using a hash, it did just a probability. It was like, there's a 60% chance to use the cable and a 40% chance to use the DSL because the cable's faster than the DSL. And then it did just stateful matching. So once it routed you over one connection,
it would keep
between you and another, it would keep going to that connection so that you wouldn't send a packet that the other side would be like, I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to him.
That sounds like that works. That sounds like that would work pretty well for most scenarios too.
Yeah. Although it can cause some issues every once in a while with things that don't expect your IP address to change between things.
Sure. Like Gmail.
So yeah. Gmail. Maybe Google stuff where there's
noticed you changed
multiple
your IP.
different. Well, it's more that there'd be multiple IPs you'd be connecting to at Google, maybe even at the same time. Like if you're on like Google Plus, you're connecting to Google Plus, and then you're also connecting over to this other thing.
Yeah.
And it depends. Google's probably not too bad with it, especially now that some corporate firewalls are starting to route across a group of IPs as well. But so I don't know that pfSense does it. I know it's popular enough that I imagine pfSense has something for it, but maybe they don't.
Or there probably is a how-to on how to do it.
Yeah, but I've done it before with just the FreeBSD's IPFW NAT and a probability rule, then making it sticky. So I'm sure it can be done. But yeah, the MikroTik one sounds okay, except for, we've talked about the MikroTiks and their vulnerabilities before as well. So you gotta make sure
I was wondering,
keep it patched up.
Yeah, okay. So Anders writes in, and he wants some, speaking of keeping things secure, he wants some help. He says, hi there, Chris and Al, longtime listener of the Jupiter Broadcasting shows. Can't wait for my hoodie to arrive. I'd like to get your input on what I can do to improve the security of my network, and mainly my server, which acts as an entry point. So here's a quick rundown of what my network looks like. I've got a pfSense machine that only has one port open to the outside world, SSH port 22, for one of my servers. On that server, I've restricted SSH to only allow one specific user to connect. I'm using SSH keys for access. I've configured fail to ban any IP that enters an incorrect password on the first attempt. When I'm away from home, I use a USB stick I've set up with PuTTY and Tray. Regular PuTTY couldn't save session files on the USB stick itself. He says it also has a portable version of Firefox configured to use the SSH connections as a SOCKS 5 proxy. This allows me to reach all of my internal networks so I can stream music from Subsonic. And he says, but the most important thing is that, of course, browsing the web and bypassing the web filter at work. I make a new SSH key for the USB stick on a regular basis, but he's looking for ideas on ways to make this even more secure, sort of lock it down even more. Do you have any ideas that jump out at you?
Well, it depends what you're trying to do, I suppose. If it's a FreeBSD machine, there's a security chapter in the handbook, chapter 14, that's recently had a whole bunch of stuff added to it, and it really talks about some of the different things, what the threats are, how you need a ground-up approach, securing individual accounts, locking down and permitting who to do escalation to root and stuff, dealing with password policy enforcements, like setting minimum password length, setting expiration policies, all that kind of fun stuff. Dealing with rootkits and stuff, doing binary verification and making sure that your system files haven't been changed when you don't expect it. All the other kind of tunings and secure levels and all that kind of stuff you want to do.
I would, he says here in his email that he's got one server that he's particularly, he relies upon. There are, he didn't mention what OS he was using, but there's a lot of services like LogWatch and other ones that will watch your log. Make sure you're getting useful information out of your logs. So one thing I think people have that happens a lot with their home servers on their home connection is they get it all set up, they get it all secure, maybe even keep it patched. But you really, at the end of the workday, you don't want to. It's not like you want to spend a lot of time in varlog, right? So find something that will extract important errors and send them to you. So for my home servers here, LogWatch does that, and then when something substantial happens, LogWatch kicks me an email, and I get an email in my inbox. I never remember to check my server logs ever, not after a couple of weeks. After I've got it deployed, out of sight, out of mind, right? But if I get those emails, like I just recently replaced a switch in my living room. Yes, I have a switch in my living room because my server.
Mine's in my laundry room.
Yeah, your laundry room. Geeky, Alan. Geeky.
Well, it doesn't. The laundry room, the ceiling isn't finished, so it was the best place to follow the cables in, and it's where the cable modem comes into the side of the house.
Well, so my old switch was going out, and I didn't have any idea. I did notice like we were having some problems streaming Plex videos, but I didn't really look into it very much. Oh yeah, turns out the Ethernet port kept going up, going down, going up, going down, and so LogWatch sent me a report. It snips the part of the log that I need to pay attention to, and I can see ETH0 down, ETH0 up, ETH0 down. Oh, my switch is going out. It was either that or my network port, but it turned out to be my switch, and that's the kind of thing that would have bit me probably a week or two down the road, and I would have had very little immediate insight into what was going on. And I wouldn't have, I don't even know if I would have thought of checking the logs normally because it just sort of sits in the corner and runs these days. So that's probably one way that you could immediately gain visibility and keep your network secure. Because it sounds like you're, Anders, it sounds like you're taking a lot of steps to make things secure, but just make sure you got that log portion taken care of. All right. Our next email comes in from Bastian, and he's got a couple of questions. He says, Alan, can you please explain some basic terms like the key certificate or terms like is the key and the certificate the same thing? And what is a personal certificate, an SSL certificate, a root certificate, an intermediate certificate? He has some questions about the basics, Alan.
Right. Okay. So there's a couple of things. So the key and the certificate are not the same thing. They're two parts of the same concept, though. So the certificate is like it's the part, so it's like your degree from a college, right? So it's this piece of paper that says, this is actually Bob, right? And it's signed by the school,
okay,
right? And then separate from that, Bob has his secret key that proves that certificate belongs to him. Right, so there's two parts. There's a certificate, it's the public key that you can give to everybody, and the key, which is the private key that you keep only for yourself. The difference between a regular public key and a certificate is a certificate contains other information, right? With the regular, like SSH keys, you have the public and private part, and the public part's really short, and you just give it out to the server you want to log into. With a certificate, it's that same thing, but also includes somebody else certifying something about you. That's why it's called a certificate, right? Because somebody is certifying that information about you. So, it says, my name is Bob, and I'm allowed to do this, signed by school, right? And then the key is the part you use to do it. So in your typical setup, the web server has a certificate and you don't have anything. So you go to the website and they send you their certificate saying, I'm actually PayPal.com, signed by Symantec. Or somebody, or Global Sign, or somebody, right? One of the SSL certificate authorities, which we'll get to in a second. So then they send you that certificate in a random number. Right? They send you the certificate, and you send back a random number, and then they sign it with the private key, and then you can verify that using the certificate, because on the certificate is the public key, and you do math, and it proves that the person who sent you the PayPal certificate actually has the private key and is actually PayPal. And then you go and do your regular stuff. And so that's all well and good. Except you got that certificate and it says signed by PayPal, and you're like, well, or signed by Global Trust. I'm like, well, who are they, right? So there are these people called the root certificate authorities. So these are a couple of companies that were trusted by Microsoft originally when they made the browser, and a couple other places. But now there's this alliance that decides who gets trusted and who doesn't, which includes Firefox and Google and all those people. So built into your Firefox is this list of root certificates that are trusted. So those are like the list of schools that are trusted by the government or whatever. Or all the schools that everybody recognizes as a good school. And if you go there and you get a diploma from there, you can show it to people and they'll trust it. But if you get a diploma from Allen's School of Hackery, they probably won't trust that. Or if you just write, Bob knows how to do Linux, signed by Bob, then they'll be like, but that was you that signed it. Why would I trust that?
Right.
That's called a self-signed certificate. You'll see errors in your browser when you try that. So anyway, so the schools are these limited number of trusted places. Sometimes schools have like associated schools, or like, there's a university and inside of it, it has a bunch of separate colleges.
Yeah.
So that's an intermediate certificate. So when one of the root companies says, we trust this company to also sign certificates or issue diplomas. A lot of times, even a certificate authority itself will treat itself as an intermediate, right? So they'll have the root one, and then they'll have a bunch of separate intermediates underneath. And depending on how expensive a cert you buy, you get signed by a different one of those. And part of that is also, in the end, remember when Komodo got hacked? They've since started using intermediates for everything. So if that happens again, they could withdraw just one group of certificates instead of all of the certificates.
Yeah.
But in the end, the root is a self-signed certificate, because at the very top of the tree, there's no one above you to sign for you. So the very top, the root ones are self-signed, but they're seeded. They're in the list in your browser, so they're trusted. And then the root can then sign an intermediate certificate saying, hey, this person is below me in the chain, but we trust them. The difference between an intermediate and a regular certificate is an intermediate also has the ability to sign other certificates, right? The certificate you buy for $20 for your web server isn't allowed to sign other certificates,
right?
But an intermediate is. So you have the roots, and then you have a bunch of intermediates who are basically like resellers almost. And then below those are the regular users who are getting a certificate signed. So yeah, the SSL certificate is your diploma. An intermediate certificate is the paperwork that a university gives to a college saying that you can give out diplomas. And a root certificate is the certificate of the university saying it's a university and that it got on the list of universities that people consider to be good.
That's a great explanation. So he wrote...
There's also client certificates. So, where I, as Alan, I have my own little certificate authority that we use internally.
Sure.
And when I go to our billing system, my browser sends a certificate from my browser to the web server saying, hey, this is actually Alan. And then when the web server sees that, it says, okay, so I have the certificate saying you're Alan, and it's signed by Scale Engine. And then it goes and finds the Scale Engine certificate and says, oh, that's in my list of certificates I trust. So it then knows, it proves that I'm me to the web server.
Right.
Whereas normally it's just the web server proving it's you, or it's who it says it is. Basically, the main reason that we need this is so that if I was in control of your network or hijacking your Wi-Fi, when you try to go to PayPal, instead of going to PayPal, you go to my web server that looks like PayPal but steals your password. And an SSL certificate prevents that, because these certificate authorities aren't going to give me a certificate for PayPal.com that proves that I'm PayPal.com, because I'm not PayPal.com.
Right. So he kind of had a question that bounces off of that. He had a second email. He says, is SSH key authentication better than password authentication, and why? Can't hackers just steal the key as easily as they could guess your password? Don't they do that already? Isn't security the same if passwords are properly hashed and stored than using a certificate?
There's a couple different things. So is SSH key authentication better than password authentication? A key is a lot harder to guess because it's a lot bigger. Keys are very, very big and hard to guess. Whereas a password, most people's password is like 8 characters or something. As far as stealing it, it depends, right? A password can be stolen by watching you type it, by having a keylogger, a bunch of different things. The key file is a file on your computer. If they have access to your computer to steal the file, then yes, they can steal it. Generally, what you're supposed to do is your SSH key on your computer is supposed to be encrypted. It is by default unless you tell it not to be. And so you have to enter a password to decrypt the key to use it. The main difference there is that password isn't sent over the internet to the other server.
Right.
So it is possible they could steal the key, although depending how you do it.
And if they've gotten that far, you've got other problems.
Yeah, if they're already on your machine, then they don't need to steal the key. They're on your machine stealing your files.
Yeah, I mean, if they can get to that, then they're already there. So Josh wrote in with something that kind of follows along the same line. He says, "Hi, Alan and Chris. I've got a server now on DigitalOcean. Thanks for the credit. And I'm using it to learn different aspects of server administration and command line operation. First thing I'm working on is understanding how SSH works. I think 2 weeks ago you guys were talking about never using SSH as root. What are some practices for the use of SSH? Also, what are some projects I could use on my server that will teach me new skills? Thanks, Josh." So he kind of wanted from you some best things you always want to make sure you config when you set up a new box and turn on SSH.
Well, SSH out of the box on FreeBSD is already locked down, so root can't log in. But if it's a Linux box, I first make a new user for me called Alan or Alan Jude or whatever, and set it up so that it can become root using su and sudo. Then I go into my etc ssh sshd_config and disable login as root. And no one ever logs into that Linux box as root ever again, over SSH anyway. Projects you could use to learn about the server. I don't know. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Set up a web server, set up a mail server, set up a database server.
I would recommend for him, and I will link to, by the way, to a How To Forge article on best SSH practices for him to follow up on in the show notes. I would recommend.
He was asking about general projects, not just SSH.
Yeah.
But.
So for general projects, I would say what itch do you need scratched? Like for me, I recently set up a Quasal IRC connector.
Yes,
so that way, if you use IRC from a couple of different machines or locations or devices, game changer. Just total game. I've known about it for years, but I didn't realize how much that itch needed scratched. And then I set it up, and it's like, oh, this chain I would pay just for the VPS just to have this. So find little things like that you find motivate you, because if you're brand new, chances are you're going to get stuck. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to have a hard time. And so you need that carrot of getting that completed to sort of push you along to get it figured out. And once
when you
find
want
those
something,
things,
when you want something, you get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
You figure it out.
Exactly. So find something. Maybe you need to host a calendar. Maybe you want to try hosting a mail server. All these kinds of things are available. So just take a look at your different options and pick one. Best
bet: write things down as you do it. Keep notes. And once you get it working, delete it and do it again.
Whoa, yeah, you could. Yeah, and the nice thing...
Once you can do it twice reliably, then you know that you've actually learned it.
When you're banging on a VPS or when you're banging on a virtual box, don't forget you can take snapshots too. So if you feel like you're going to do something crazy, snapshot it first, and then if it does go bad,
snapshot it, then delete it and try again.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, you can always get the working one back.
Yeah. And just try to have fun with it, and make sure you've got it working before you put it in production, and you'll be set. Yep. So good question, though. Thanks, Josh. All right.
Yeah. For SSH best practices, we recommended a book the other day. It's SSH Mastery by Michael W. Lucas. The W is important. And you should check that out. It has everything you want to know about SSH and how you're doing it wrong.
And what's kind of cool is, here's a quick project. Once you get SSH banged away, figure out how to do X11 forwarding through an SSH session, and then install a web browser on your VPS and browse the web through your VPS through an X11 forwarded window. It'll be painfully, awfully slow, but it is so cool that you can do it.
Yeah. Or just regular SSH tunneling.
Yeah.
To run the web browser on your computer, SOCKS proxy to the SSH tunnel,
and route it through that VPS. And
when you go to what is my IP address, and it's the IP of the
the
VPS instead of your home machine.
Yep.
Which is especially good if you're at work behind a
filter,
a web filter. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked at, everybody probably watched the show knows for a while that I worked at a school district. And of course, a school district just has all kinds of filters. And sometimes they were literally filters that prevented me from doing my job. And I had a VPS that was run out of Texas. And I installed FreeNX, and I got a full remote terminal session on my VPS. It was incredible. I could just work out of that entire session all day long. I could even play video in that session, and it would actually be watchable. So there's lots of cool things you can do. It just kind of depends on what your need is. Eric writes in with a need for information about IPv6. He says, hey, Alan and Chris, I recently set up an embedded pfSense box, and I'm super happy with it so far. I even stole a few ideas off Alan, like having the box diskless and running the whole thing off a flash storage drive. I figured, while I'm finally taking the time to redo my network, I should do it right with IPv6. We should be deploying IPv6 on our networks, right? I think I have a pretty good handle on how I should configure this, but I thought I'd run it past you guys since I don't think the details of IPv6 get enough attention. He says with IPv4, home users like myself get one public IP, and then we use NAT to share it. With IPv6 and its plenty of IP addresses, we don't need NAT, right? This means every device gets a public IP, and I think there's a few quirks with that that I'll have to get used to. So my questions are, in this scenario, who handles DHCP? My cable modem? pfSense box? I assume maybe this is what the DHCP v6 relay is for. What if the address changes? Let's see, here's another question. If I need to do a request of a similar prefix for my ISP, well, hold on. Well, there's a lot of questions at once. Start with one thing. So who handles DHCP, and should he be using IPv6 on his LAN? Alan, what say you?
It depends on a lot of things. First of all, the first question is your ISP giving you native v6? Most don't. I think Comcast does, though. So that makes it a little different. But first of all, if your ISP doesn't give you IPv6, then there's not so much you can do. You can have IPv6 set up on your LAN so your machines can talk over it, but you're not going to get the internet over v6 unless you get a tunnel, and that's different. So if Comcast is doing IPv6, then you're getting an IP address. Depends how it's set up. I suppose they're using IPv6, in which case they're giving the IP address, the v6 address to your pfSense, and that address is going to be a prefix. So rather than one address, they're giving you a big chunk of addresses. And then you can then subdivide that up and give that out to the machines on your LAN, in which case you might want the DHCP to be your pfSense. Although it depends. My recommendation is for the first attempt, set up that IPv6 or the DHCP v6 relay. And what that'll do is when the DHCP request comes from the machine on your LAN to the pfSense, it'll just relay it to Comcast and see if Comcast gives you another IPv6 IP for the machine inside. And if it does, then you're set. All your machines will have v6 and you'll be hunky-dory.
Do you think he needs to worry about it, though?
It depends if he wants to.
I guess just to play with it, I suppose.
My ISP doesn't give me v6, so I don't know how it works.
I guess
with I've only ever had a tunnel where I was statically assigned a set of IP addresses and I set them up and did it internally, and I just had static v6 set up on a bunch of machines. It wasn't quite the same. It's been a long time since I played with v6.
Yeah,
I hope to learn more soon. When I get the fiber connection, I'll have v6.
Oh, cool. Oh, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit when that happens then.
Yeah. So stay tuned. But try the relay and see if Comcast just solves the problem for you. And if not, then you might have to look at setting up a DHCP v6 server on pfSense if it does that. I don't know. If you look at BSDCan on YouTube, in 2012 and 2013, there were a bunch of talks about IPv6 on pfSense, and they may have the answer in there somewhere.
Okay.
Or check their documentation. They have some documentation.
I know if you get the right guy at Comcast, because he mentions in his email that he has Comcast. If you get the right guy...
he mentioned about asking for a smaller prefix. You don't want to do that.
I know if you get, there's some engineers who in the business side, I don't know about the consumer, residential service, but in the business side, if you are interested in experimenting with IPv6, I have talked to engineers at Comcast who would be more than willing to work with you on that. I don't know how you find those people, because those have always been through clients of mine. But there are folks at Comcast that are very interested in working with people at homes and small businesses testing this stuff out. So you might do some digging around broadband reports forum, because sometimes Comcast employees post in there. You might be able to track them down that way.
That would be a good place to find out about how to do it on a home connection. Would be DSL reports.
Yeah. So let us know how it goes too. I mean, Eric, I'd be really curious. Alan's going to have it soon. I hope this is something I don't have to worry about for a while. I'm pretty happy with IPv4, especially in the LAN, but I know it's coming. It's the way of the world, Alan.
Yep.
Just move right along.
Well, it's if every home ISP offered it, then we would be somewhere.
We'd be there. Yeah, it's the problem. All right. Well, there we go. That's the feedback for this week. Here's how you can send your question in. You got a security question, sysadmin question, anything we've covered. Storage, networking, you name it, troubleshooting. We'd love to answer it for you. So email us, go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and click that contact link. Choose TechSNAP from the drop-down. Then our highly trained monkeys will hand-deliver it to the robots, which have been programmed from programmers from the future to deliver it to Alan and I. Or you can email it directly to techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. It's likely it'll get to the right place. Or, of course, you can start a thread over at links.techsnap.tv. And if you've got like Boston has even more questions. Boston, starting a thread over at our subreddit would be the perfect solution for you, because you got like 6 questions in one email, and then you send another email with a bunch of other questions. And honestly, we just can't get to all of them in one show. But there's folks in the subreddit that are very, very smart, and they might be able to help you out too. So links.techsnap.tv. But Alan, with the feedback all done, that means it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't quite fit at the top of the show, but we still want to talk about them, give you some links where you can read up on your own after the show. Some of these links came from our awesome brand new subreddit we just rolled out this week, links.techsnap.tv. And Alan, our first Roundup story, it's a big one, and it comes from one of our favorites right here on the show. We talk about TarSnap all the time, and today, in conjunction with Stripe, TarSnap is rolling out support for payments in Bitcoin. And the reason why this is kind of a big deal is he's not just taking Bitcoin payments, he's integrating them through the Stripe payment processor, which is a pretty popular one. He says he's going to be one of the first companies in Canada to use Stripe's new internationalized payment processing service. This has satisfied a long-standing request from TarSnap customers. Until that point, TarSnap was only accepting payments via PayPal, a service which, for a variety of reasons, people did not want to use. Today, I am happy to announce that TarSnap is satisfying another frequent request again with help from Stripe. TarSnap is the first user of Stripe support for Bitcoin payments. 2 big stories in one right there, really.
Yep. Yeah, so TarSnap, if you don't know, is a secure online backup system. Basically uses the client, they give you the source code so you can audit it. The license is restricted, but you can audit the source code and make sure it's doing what it says it's doing. And all the data is encrypted on your machine before it leaves, and you can verify that with the source code. And then it goes up to the server where, because you control the encryption keys, nobody can read it. And it gets securely stored, and it uses trusted technology and special algorithm that Colin invented, the details of which are in a video from EuroBSDCon last year, where it detects differences and stuff. So basically, it makes a tarball of the files you want to back up, and then when you do your backup the next day, the tarball is only the differences, using his special calculate the differences routine.
It's probably worth mentioning his connection to some of the alt crypto coins.
Yes, and currently he says that he's not accepting the altcoins yet because that's not built into Stripe. If Stripe supports it, he'll add it. But yes, he kind of has a special connection to all the altcoins like Litecoin and so on, because Colin Percival designed Scrypt, which is the key derivation algorithm that he actually wrote for TarSnap, but is actually the basis of all of the altcoins.
Yeah, that's kind of a big connection.
Yeah.
So
he didn't have anything to do with it. He just wrote this really good security algorithm, and somebody was like, that would be better than SHA-256 because it's memory dependent instead of CPU dependent. Colin specifically designed it to make it harder for the NSA to crack because it takes a lot of RAM instead of a lot of CPU power. So you couldn't just design FPGAs to do it cheaper.
Right.
So even if you have piles of money, it's still harder to crack. Whereas SHA-256, the more money you have, the more you can crack.
And Colin points out, too, that he says, I don't know about it, Bitcoin as a store of value because of all the fluctuations in price, but he says it sure shines as a medium of exchange with its low transaction cost and irreversibility. He says Bitcoin is the cash of the internet. But one of the things that's interesting is I want to get paid in dollars, and so this Stripe system converts it immediately into the fiat currency of his wishing, and just minus a small processing fee immediately on purchase, which is a lot like what BitPay and Coinbase can offer. But the fact that Stripe is building this in is huge.
And their API is just amazing.
There you go.
And they have this, you can implement it. They give you like a JavaScript library, and you can do it all without having to modify your web page at all. Like you just insert some HTML and stuff happens. Colin doesn't want to have to run PHP or some web app on his website to accept the payments. So it's all done in an iframe to the Stripe JavaScript system and over HTTPS to the Stripe server. So Colin doesn't even have to worry about his website having
PHP
PCI compliance.
Oh.
Yeah, and so he doesn't even have to have PHP, right?
Yeah.
Like his website is static. And, his payment processing is decoupled, and it's all very good.
Love that.
Stripe currently supports US, Canada, England, like 6 other countries are in beta or something like that.
Yeah, and we were talking on the pre-show.
We use them at Scale Engine for all of our US and Canadian dollar processing.
We were talking on the pre-show that I've heard from a lot of Coda Radio audience members who have built Stripe in to their application, probably because of that API you were just talking about. They love it, and it's really popular amongst developers too. So it's really cool. We got a fake PGP key that's been found, right, Alan?
Yes. Well, a couple of them, but it's not just fake PGP keys are not all that uncommon. The interesting thing is who they're for. So someone generated a PGP key and pretended to be Aaron Clark, who's one of the Tor developers.
Oh.
And someone also did Gavin Andreessen, who's the maintainer of the Bitcoin client.
Yeah.
In both cases, these PGP keys were used to sign downloads for popular pieces of the crypto software that could have been infected with malware. PGP keys are supposed to be verified through a web of trust, right? It's like, instead of having a central authority like SSL certificates do, it's more like, all right, so you present me your key, and I'm like, all right, it was signed by this list of people who claim they have checked that I am who I say I am. And it's like, well, hey, there's, Chris, who I happen to know. So if Chris trusts you, I trust you. Or it's like, if Chris trusts you and I trust Chris, then I trust you. Or, that was signed by Matt. I don't really know Matt, but Matt is trusted by Chris, and Chris is trusted by me. So, and the idea is that with enough hops, you would eventually be able to prove that, know someone that trusts someone that trusts someone that trusts this person. And you create this web of trust. But one person found that even though Aaron Clark, the Tor developer's PGP key is signed by 30 people, the person who was trying to send an encrypted email to her couldn't find, even going out a bunch of steps, couldn't find anyone that they trusted somebody that trusted Aaron Clark. And so it kind of exposes the problem of the PGP keys is, not enough people have them, not enough people use them properly, and the fact that the web of trust just doesn't scale so well.
Huh. I hadn't even heard about this story, Alan, so I'm glad you brought that to our attention.
Yeah, and so also, you have to be careful when you see a download and it's signed with a PGP and you check the PGP signature and it's good, but you have to check that the key that signed it is actually the right key. Right? Because anybody can claim this is the key of, so-and-so at Gmail or whatever. And so if you're using PGP keys, make sure you sign people you actually know and stuff. So more key signing parties is what we need.
That's exactly right. Like when we go to these cons and stuff?
Yes, at the conference, after all the Snowden stuff, at EuroBSDCon, there was a giant key signing party.
We should get one going to Linux Fest.
Yeah, because everybody upgraded their PGP keys from 2048 to 4096-bit. So everybody regenerated their keys, and so they had to rebuild that web of trust. The web of trust scales fairly well in, say, something like the FreeBSD project, because there's like 400 or 500 developers, and you've met a bunch of them at conferences,
right?
And
you recognize the names, you know their work.
At the key signing party, you had to have like your passport to prove your face. And
very good.
Key.
Very good.
Right, and then once enough people have done that online, eventually, so the guy from Russia was there and got his key sign, and then when he's at a conference somewhere else, with none of the people that were at the first conference, but maybe with someone who is at a different conference, eventually they'll find between them a web of trust.
Yeah.
But when you scale out to the entire internet, it gets a lot harder to find a path to somebody.
So before we go too far from cryptocurrencies, I got to talk about our next roundup story. This one, go figure, I suppose. Apps with millions of Google Play downloads have been covertly mining crypto coin in the background. There's a few Android apps. Prized is one of them, but it's been pulled from the Android. Another app called Songs, as of this recording, is still in there. And these are doing kind of different approaches. For example, this is from Trend Micro. Songs was installed on 1 million to 5 million times. Prized was installed to 10,000 to 50,000 times. Neither one of their apps' descriptions or terms of service make it clear that they'll be mining coins. Mining apps typically consume larger than average amounts of electricity and can generate extremely hot temperatures on the phone. Some of these were smart enough to kind of just do it in the background a little bit. Some of them would sneak it in, some of them not. And some people think that this was a proof of concept to develop a system where you could have it on millions of phones and maybe 10 seconds on every phone once a day or something like that, and just sort of distribute it way, way out. And so now Trend Micro is working with Google to pull down some of these.
Right. It could also be interesting if it was accepted by the user as an alternative to ads in the app.
I think I'd be okay with that.
Configure it so it only runs when my phone's plugged in.
Right.
Or something.
Or if I have 80% or more battery or something. Yeah.
I don't know that it makes any sense, but it's. One of the things when I see apps with millions of downloads on Google Play, I also wonder some of those have been faked. Like we saw, what was it? The part of the reason with that was that one game that disappeared and there was all the hoopla.
The Flappy Bird?
Yeah. Is that most of those downloads were fake and the guy was making tons of money off fakeness? How much of that is this or possibly malware on phones that was installing the app to run the Bitcoin thing? It's like, were these actually embedded in useful apps that people were actually using? Or was it
Songs and Prized maybe. Now, both apps, these two apps that Trend Micro was looking at, both of them were smart enough.
Many apps. So.
Yeah. These two apps that Trend Micro looked at were smart enough to only run while the phone was recharging. So that might
you already expect your phone to be warm.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's not actually killing your battery life that you would notice.
But they still would consume bandwidth and still heat up. But I don't know. I've always thought that. See, the problem with Bitcoin is that the computational power that's required now is so high that you almost are not even scratching the surface because people.
But if you're doing millions of phones,
maybe at scale, right?
If you make $1,000 a month, that's still $1,000 a month, right?
It could be more profitable than ads. That's a really interesting idea. Well, we talk about them all the time now in our next story in the roundup. Scholar vulnerabilities identified in a power and petrochemical plants. Hackers are going to take them over, shut down our plants.
This was a Japanese industrial control system that's used at 7,600 different power plants, chemical plants, and petrochemical plants like oil refineries. And they've released an update. So the researchers from, I think, Rapid7 discovered it back in December, talked with the vendor, and the vendor released a patch, and they talked about it at a conference in Spain recently. The
attacker would send a specially crafted sequence of packets to bkcl-logserve.exe and trigger a heap-based buffer overflow, which in turn could cause a DDoS, and slow the execution of arbitrary code with system privileges. Second would involve a similar situation with a special packet could be sent to the bkhodkeq.exe file, geez, easy for me to say, and cause a stack-based overflow.
It's Japanese in the beginning, so who knows what it's supposed to mean.
Well, there you go. So the little buffer overflows in your SCADA controller software. Nice. Yep. Hey, we talked about, I think, last week about the full disclosure mailing list shutting down. Fresh start for the full disclosure mailing list. Have you read this?
So Gordon Lyon rebooted the full disclosure mailing list. His website, insecure.org, was the most popular mirror of the full disclosure mailing list, and so he was a fan of it and so on. and he runs a couple of other big mailing lists, like all the ones for Nmap. So he's decided that he'll host the new full disclosure mailing list since the old one was shut down.
Very exciting.
And since he has the mirror of the other one, it would kind of almost be a continuation, probably.
Our next story is a PDF, the sniper attack. What's this about?
This is how to de-anonymize Tor using a denial of service attack. So basically, by having a client send to a node 92 kilobits per second, so that's not very much. That's like 12 or 13 kilobytes a second. It caused the victim relay's memory usage to go up by 2.2 megabits per second.
Oh.
So use up all the RAM really quickly until you can crash the relay node.
Yeah.
By crashing enough nodes, you could take out the exit nodes. So this looked at here. In a live attack, they could take out all of the top 20 exit nodes in about 30 minutes, thereby reducing the bandwidth capacity of the entire Tor network by 35%. Show how an attacker could then promote themselves as the new exit relay and start reading traffic. So basically, by taking out enough of the relays, so if you're the FBI, you could put up a whole bunch of relays to capture a larger percent of the traffic, and then attack and take out all the other relays, so that you're the only relays. Or if you're 50% of all the relays and somebody's traffic goes through like 6 relays, they're definitely going to go through you at least 2 or 3 times.
I don't think it's that big of a stretch to think that they may already be doing that.
Right, we already saw some stuff like that. We're like, what are they doing here?
Right.
And so with that, then if they can take over a significant amount of the network, then they can actually know if they're the first node and the last node, and they compare the traffic, then they could actually determine who's sending what to where and see where you're going and censor you or track you or whatever. Yeah. So they talk about ways to defend against that.
If you're a heavy Tor user or know some folks are, you might want to read that. That's kind of disturbing.
Or just if you're interested in it,
Yeah. This next
There's
story,
some interesting graphics there with like
the rate
it's like
fill.
The demon logo and then the onion logo and then the onion with the horns.
Yeah, I was looking at that. It's not overly graphic, but they do have some good stuff in there. Yep. It's a lot of text, but there are some good visual aids.
Well, it's a university style research paper.
Yeah. Okay, Alan. Our next story shows you that we launched TechSNAP at the right time, because it's now, I guess, just part of popular culture. Sony Pictures is working on a movie that will, at least in part, somebody will be playing the role of Brian Krebs from Krebs on Security.
Yep.
And is this about the Target breach?
Kind of. So apparently, if you remember back in February, the New York Times did a profile on Krebs.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, after seeing that, some guy wanted to make a movie out of it, and he called up the New York Times people and asked them a bunch of stuff about Krebs. And then the New York Times person kind of told Krebs about it, and then he managed to confirm it from a source in a different newspaper, and it looks like there's going to be a movie.
Krebs has some fun with it, though. He points out the guy's previous work, The Expendables 2, The Mechanic, 16 Blocks, and The Equalizer, starring Denzel Washington.
Those are all great movies.
No, it's the new Equalizer of fall 2014. But yeah,
right. Oh, I don't know about the Equalizer, but The Mechanic was really good.
What about The Expendables?
That's fun. It was what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and he grabbed an image from BrianKrebsFacts.com where somebody did a very good Photoshop of his face onto Neo from The Matrix stopping bullets.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of seeing him as an action star in this movie, and that looks really interesting.
That would be really interesting, actually. And I think that's what he's seeing, too, or at least hoping.
Yeah.
Wow.
There we go. You get Guy Pearce or Ed Norton to play him.
What a world we live in where...
Well, it'd be nice if... the technical details are just not going to be any good, so maybe
it's going to be a little hard to watch. But
he's got an interesting story, right? In the last year, European cyber criminals have stolen Brian Krebs' identities a dozen times, brought down his website, said mean things about him, written things about him inside malware so researchers would read it, send him fecal matter and heroin in the mail, call the SWAT scene to raid his house, all kinds of things, right?
Chat room wants to know, Alan, how long until Alan Jude the movie is made? That's what we're all wondering.
I don't know.
A superhero.
Who would play me in the movie?
A hero from Canada.
Yes. Write in to our feedback thing who you think should play me in the movie.
Love it. I love it. All right. So I have a feeling we're going to be hearing more ATM compromise stories as the XP deadline is just next week. But ATM. Well,
this one's, if you remember, we talked about the ATM where they hacked into it and then, they would send the mule there and then the bad guy, to make sure he didn't get ripped off, he would have to send the person that was robbing the ATM a code to type into the ATM.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that one is they had to hook a keyboard up to the ATM, which looks kind of obvious if people are walking down, and type in that code. And the person controlling it didn't know exactly how much money they took out of the ATM.
Oh.
So the guy who we already kind of considered to be really smart for having these safeguards to make sure he wasn't getting cut out of the loop.
Right.
Well, to keep the guys from skimming, he's rebuilt the system. So now he sends an SMS text message to a phone that's been plugged into the ATM. Right, so they could leave the ATM, leave the phone plugged in over USB to the ATM, so it can act as the keyboard, and it keeps the phone charged that way.
Does the ATM actually have an exposed USB port in this scenario?
Well, see, remember what they did was they cut out the plastic to get at the USB port and then sealed it up again?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So they could seal it up with the phone inside.
Yes.
And as long as nobody looks in that part of the ATM, they're not going to know, right? And so he said the mastermind sends a message to the phone, which causes it to type stuff into the ATM, which makes it spit out an amount of money he decides. So you send the courier, they say, hey, I'm at the cash machine, and you spit out a X amount of money. And because now you know how much money you gave them, you make sure that they're not cutting you out of the loop.
Wow. This guy is really smart.
Yeah. Apparently this is actively happening in Mexico.
What do you think of Matt Damon? Corky recommends Matt Damon. Shrimp recommends Arnold Schwarzenegger to play Alan Jude. We've gotten a few suggestions in here. Jeff Goldblum to play Alan Jude. That one came from WW. There you go, Alan. I think we have Patrick Stewart. Sean Connery. That's the one I like.
My hair's not quite fitting that much.
I wonder if Sean Connery would come out of retirement.
How old do people think I am? I'm only 29.
It's the gray, Alan.
Yes.
This one, not a big surprise, but hackers transformed one of EA's web pages into an Apple ID phishing scheme. It looks just like Apple's website, and it's on EA's domain. But guess what? If you plug your credentials into that, they own your iCloud account. It's a fake screen. I wonder what happened at EA. I wish this article doesn't tell you how they got into EA's servers to replace that page, but it was for the online Scrabble game.
Which I'm guessing a lot of people play on their iPad. So the main difference there is when you're looking at a page on an iPad, you don't have quite as much browser Chrome to tell you that this isn't the website you expected it to be.
True. Yeah.
Oftentimes when you're not actually looking at the URL, it's not even visible what page you're on.
Yeah. Yeah, on mobile, it'll often hide that URL completely.
Exactly, because of the lack of screen real estate. So if you're on, a mobile or a iPad type thing, when you're not using them, those kind of float out of the way. And because of that, you wouldn't even realize that you're at EA.com instead of Apple.com.
Right. Next story in the roundup is an example of how I need to do my wiring in the new studio. It's so beautiful. This is a GIF of how you should be running your Cat 5 in your data center. Although maybe you could flare it up with some better colored Velcro. But other than that, it's a great picture of some beautiful wire management. If you like a little wire management cable porn, we've got two, actually.
Then the second link is just to the entire, there's a subreddit or a subcategory on Imager called /r/cable porn.
Oh, wow.
And it's literally just
lots of amazing
images of very well done cabling.
I wish I had more of these people around me because
you can see the one they have a cabinet cleaner. They show what it looked like in January and then February and then when they were done. And it's like, wow, you cleaned that up really nice.
I have seen, and I have been partially responsible for the ones that look more like the before it's cleaned. I'm not really good at the wire management stuff because I feel like I just got to rip it all out anyways at some point.
Yep.
Wow, and that's Tiger Direct. Oh, this is Tiger Direct posted this one. That's one of their data center machines.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. So the whole album, if you want to look at some Well, stuff that just makes me look feel bad, like I'm a bad person. Now, one thing that we all...
you are a bad person.
One thing we can all rest comfortably knowing is that as long as we are using WPA2 on our wireless access points, we never have to worry. Right, Alan?
No, that's not how that works.
No, WPA2 has been actually cracked. Turns out.
Apparently, a little bit. I couldn't get access to the paper because it's behind a paywall. But according to the synopsis I read, it seems that there's a vulnerability in the deauthentication phase. So the way WPA2 works is every once in a while you have to stop using this key and switch to the next encryption key. And during that, when you're in the middle of deassociating, somebody could pretend to be you and keep using the old key for a little bit until it completely expires. And if they're quick enough, they could get on your network for a little bit, apparently.
The pre-shared key.
Yeah. And it talks about some of the new options like TKIM and then CCMP or something. I forget what it's called. And the different upgraded encryption and how to get actually 256-bit and so on. But mostly, this is something that will have to be addressed in the software. And so...
All right. Well, it seems like you can't have
this will be hard to fix. I do because if they make a fixed version, it'll be hard to tell whether you have it or not. So unless they're going to decide to call it WPA3, but it seems like that might already be taken. So it seems like it's going to be quite an interesting thing. And hopefully we'll have more information on that when we can get a hold of the paper and see what it actually says.
Dig through it. So we've all heard about Flight M370 and MH370. There's a related sort of go figure cyber attack component to this whole story. Phishing attacks have been spotted against the government targets. Surprise, surprise, Alan. We call it trend jacking, right?
Yep. So we kind of talked about this on Linux Unplugged on
I think it was
Tuesday.
The pre-show though, right?
But it's pre-show or post-show. I think it was post-show.
Yeah, okay.
But we were talking about, how long is it going to... it was pre-show, yes. I mean, you were talking about the CNN coverage and stuff.
How ridiculous it's been.
Yeah, and it's like, well, somebody's going to take advantage of that. Yeah. You're like, oh, look, here's this new news flash. There's something important you should see about MH370. And you click on it and you get a virus. Mm-hmm. And they're now doing this specifically targeting government people. Being like, oh, here's the internal FAA report on blah, blah, blah. And you click it and bad things happen.
Surprise, surprise. Watch what you're clicking out there.
Yep.
Our last story in the roundup, I'm glad we got this one here because I remember I saw this headline and meant to grab this one. Sources, according to Krebs, confirmed that a credit card breach has happened at the California DMV.
Yep.
Oh.
I'm not sure, is there a general, monthly service where, it seems, why are they storing your credit card long-term anyway?
Great question.
Probably data retention laws or something.
Yeah.
So... sources have confided in Brian Krebs, since he's the person you confide in if you have sources about this.
Yeah, and if you want to get into his movie, you better hurry up.
Yeah, exactly. I should talk to him more. I should have invited him to interview on the show before he got on a movie.
Yeah.
So the California DMV was breached, and
they say they've alerted law enforcement officials.
Yeah, there's not much news yet, but I'm sure if you watch Krebs' blog, the details will come out.
If you're in Cali, probably worth knowing. Great question. Why are they retaining that data? Now, they say they are claiming that there's no evidence at this time that there's a direct breach of the DMV's computer systems. But they say in abundance of caution, in the interest of protecting sensitive information of California drivers, the DMV has opened up an investigation to any potential security breach in conjunction with state and federal law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there you go, Alan. That brings us to the end of the roundup, doesn't it? I think we're all done today. So you can help be part of our show by going over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, clicking that contact link, and shooting us an email, or hanging out with us live over at jblive.tv, or if you want the audio stream, jblive.info. And join us next week for episode 156 of the TechSNAP program. I'll see you right back here, okay, Alan?
Yep.
Good night, sir, and good night, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSNAP. We'll see you, yes, you, right back here next week.